puppets with strings like that, which have been used in a theater show.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to do it without puppeteer involved.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, because I love this old automata stuff.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening.
I travel alone. Sometimes I'm east, sometimes I'm west. No chains can ever bind.
Greetings and welcome to Georgian Crossroads and beyond. And today we are leaving Georgia and we're going beyond. Although now and then I do mention Georgia in these things because, of course, I would. It's a place I've traveled to. But what we're doing today is we're doing the final list. We've started at the very bottom with tourism styles I don't even want to mention again here. And hopefully we've caused you to think a little bit about what it means to be a good tourist. You're not locked in at one level of tourist. If you did one stupid thing, just traveled around and got selfies, that doesn't mean you're a bad person. It does mean you should learn to improve and be a good tourist, someone who gives something as well as takes something from your travels. And we're going to be doing the final five, what I consider to be the best. Now, you may disagree. Feel free to write to me what you think the best travelers are. If you have any other opinions or comment, I'll take disagreements and I'll take agreements. Funny that. Well, we're calling these respectful. We're calling these respectful travelers. And the difference between a respectful traveler and simply a tourist is that the respectful traveler actually knows where they're going. So, slow travel is a good thing, and we'll discuss what that is. Another thing is staying with friends, particularly if those friends are embedded in that culture or are members of that culture. Another thing is specialty travel, traveling for a reason. I often travel to go visit puppet theaters in different towns. Other people go to learn about cooking, which goes with the food and cooking travel, food and culture travel. But when you go much further in, you're not there for a day or two or something like that. You're there for a while to learn. Research travel. So when you're going for a very specific research project, which most people are not. And then finally, what I consider the top of the top is when you graduate from being a tourist, from being a traveler, and you become a visitor. Someone who's actually a friend of the culture, who knows the culture, who doesn't romanticize the culture, but has a lot of respect, and at the same time knows the problems of the culture. Someone who can go in and say, here I am again. I'm back in Prague. I'm back in Paris. I'm back in Hawaii even. You know, that you're inside the culture. You're not just skimming across the surface. And that is the goal, to learn something from people who live in different places and to learn something about life that causes you to reflect back on the life you're living. Let's go visit some good travelers, shall we? And finally, the last five, respectful travelers. So these are all what I would consider top-of-the-line travelers. These are people who understand why they're traveling and are not only getting the best experience they can, but they're also giving something back, both in terms of where they are by learning from people, and but also by becoming a part of what they're experiencing. And one of the ways you can look at all of these is the earlier numbers were all about alienation, fulfilling your own desires. But this is much more about learning something new. education. I hate to use the word self-improvement, but there you are. So the first one would be slow travel. Slow travel, which is, again, another newer category. And I would say this is better than vloggers and extreme travelers. The slow traveler takes their time through. They could be a video blogger. They could be doing more adventurous traveling. For instance, Eva Zubek, whom I criticized earlier, spent quite a bit of time in Pakistan, which I give her all the credit in the world for. Slow travel, now I heard someone interviewed recently on a YouTube channel, and he said he was a slow traveler because he just travels to one place and doesn't think about traveling everywhere in the world. And I would say that's a very good idea. Not quite slow travel, but getting there. I think real slow travel is essentially embedding oneself within the culture for a while. And first you have to go once to see it new. The one thing a slow traveler can't be is the person just skimming their way through country after country. If you get a Eurail pass and you're just, every 3 days you're getting off at a new stop, you are not a slow traveler. A slow traveler is someone who realizes you don't have to see the whole world. You can't see the whole world. Are you seeing where you're going to? A secondary ancillary question to that is, do you know where you're living? Have you seen where you live? And there is a whole question here of why have people begun to look at the places they come from as being so boring? And this is especially true in little towns in the Midwest in America, but it's true in so many places. People think there's something really exciting going on in these big cities. Having lived in New York City and having grown up in the San Francisco Bay Area, I can confidently say, having also lived in a very small town in Alaska, that there's not that much going on in big cities. There's a lot of things happening. And when I left New York to go to Alaska, people would often say to me, but Byrne, what are you going to do there? But by do, they didn't mean activity. Because there was plenty to do in Alaska. You could go hiking. You could go learn about bears. You could start a garden. You could meet with friends and eat salmon together. Plenty to do. What they meant is, what kind of media can you consume there? But now that we have the internet everywhere, that question has become pretty much moot. So, here's another one. Staying with friends, especially friends from that culture, but staying with friends nonetheless in any capacity. One of the things I've always encouraged is when I have friends come visit me in different places, come stay with me and I'll show you around the city. And many of my friends are very appreciative of the little mini tours I would give, taking them around. Because they know I'm not there to make any money off of them. I just want them to see the things I've discovered. Maybe they'll like them too. Staying with a friend from that culture gives you an in to that culture. So it means that you are able to find a way to connect with the culture. You get on the fast track. And I don't mean that in the worst way, like you're just skimming through. But I mean, you get injected into the bloodstream of the culture, which is very important. And you start to learn respect for it very quickly, in a way you don't in some of these more alienated modes of travel. Specialty travel is very important. Specialty travel is to understand something specific. History, art, but not just the culture generally. You're not there just to pick up on the vibes of the Netherlands, or, you're not coming to Georgia just to see a few things. You're going there for a very specific purpose, and the specific purpose is something you have defined to yourself very clearly. So, I have traveled around for years researching puppetry in Europe, and that's one of the things that motivated me to come to Georgia. But it wasn't the only thing, but it certainly helped. But one thing I've discovered is when I would go to visit people of puppet shows and to talk with puppeteers, I was immediately inside the culture in a way all those other people just coming because they go, let's go to Prague, wouldn't be. And I remember having this experience where I was watching some people that I knew who were doing an antique version of the Czech Faust play from 150 years ago. And I was in a kind of an abandoned palace, looking straight down on what's called the Royal Road that everyone takes from the Old Town Square over the Charles Bridge and up to the castle. And I was right near the Charles Bridge. And my experience was radically different from these hordes who just seemed to have to follow this trail. I was inside of the Czech Republic. They were just passing through without much knowledge. And they had choices like, should I go to the Vietnamese fish chewing place, massage parlor, and get the fish to chew off the dead flesh from my soul, from my soul, or should I get M&Ms? Because there's someone who sells vast quantities of candies. It's ridiculous stuff. Whereas I was in touch with Czech history in so many different ways by studying puppetry. And then 2 more to go, research travel. Now this is specifically for academics doing a long-term version of the specialty travel. This could also be exchange students going to some country for a year in high school or university. It could be archaeologists. It could be someone going for a very specific but much more long-term reason to visit. And that can be an amazing thing, particularly if you are prepared for it. And finally, you graduate. To me, what is the top is when you're no longer a traveler, you're a visitor. And by visitor, what I mean is you feel at home in this other culture, in this other place. You know it. You have some knowledge of its history, of its culture. You know what would be a violation of the culture. You know what the foibles of those people are. You have friends there. Ideally, it would be knowing the language, which I still haven't mastered here in Georgia. But I have certainly got to the point where when I have friends coming here, I can do all the cultural navigation with my limited language skills. But the point is this. And I'm no longer a visitor here. I live here. So that is beyond graduation. That's like you starting your new job now. To be a visitor somewhere is to be the most respectful person. To understand, to love, to sometimes you're angry at the culture because they act certain kinds of ways, and you don't like everything they do. But you do that in a familiar sense. So we'll leave it there. I think that gives you an idea about my ranking. You could make your own list of the different kinds of tourists. And I think if I was doing this over, I would have a very specific one for just party tourists. And there's probably some others I thought of along the way. Well, so there you are. Where are you in the list? That's the most important thing. Go through the list and say, who was I? Or how many different types of these? If you get any older, you will find yourself, for instance, maybe when you're younger, you get taken on a cruise ship. Later, you go back as an independent tourist or traveler. Eventually you develop some hobby or interest that takes you to a place to really learn something of a skill that's related to this place. You find out where they make the best shoes in the world. Hint, it's probably Italy. You go to a place where, to research some sort of art. Maybe you have a certain kind of cooking you want to learn. In other words, you graduate to near the top of the list. It's easy to do, but it requires imagination. It requires your will. It requires saying to yourself, no, I'm not going to be a wasteful bottom feeder tourist who just lets people do something for me. No, tourism isn't just going to be me relaxing in an all-inclusive resort. I'm going to get out and actually appreciate things and not disturb the world unduly as I go. No matter how, as I used to say to my tourists in Alaska when I take them to see bears, we may see really stupid people, but we're not going to be stupid. And that's my recommendation for you as far as tourism goes. And in fact, one day we saw some remarkably stupid people, but we'll save that story for the tourism and reality series when I talk about Alaska. But don't be that. Learn, graduate, get better, learn more when you travel. Take time. All right, so I'm living in Tbilisi, Georgia. I'll bet most of you have never been there. Very few of you can find it on a map. Go look now. Here's a hint. There's the map. Find Tbilisi, Georgia. And don't come visit here as a tourist. Come as a visitor. Well, I hope you watched the whole series. Thanks for coming along, and let me know what you think about what makes travel good. What have been your best travel experiences? Why don't you write some of those down below for me, for all of us? And we've got a lot more coming up on this channel. I'm putting a bit more effort into it to see if I can get it to grow. Subscribe, share, hit like, do all that wonderful stuff. But you know what? So far, I've been doing this channel since kind of weekly. I started in 2019. Essentially, I've been doing this channel for 5 years, and not one person has ever contributed. If you want to be that first person, feel free. There's a PayPal link below. Be the first person. This is Byrne in Tbilisi saying Nakwamdis, which is goodbye in Georgian, and Droebit, which means simply temporarily, but what it means is we'll just be gone from each other a little while, and we will see each other soon.